Generally, you said feminism is neutral.
Here's what actually happened.
The foundation of all knowledge.
Money. I'm really mad that
what difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
difference
Stop.
The deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
And to lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong. Yeah, you're promoting, right?
Ideologies that make that politics, right? This is my ideology.
But...
So, 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage? The first GOP debate...
Cool. Okay. Oh, that? We're the crowbar, you say?
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back from Thanksgiving break. I am Sarah, the Raging Tomato, here bringing to you live yet another debate for Moderator Monday. This evening, I have with me Ghosty, also known as Six Hosty. Confuse them, it gets crazy, don't worry. And also Joshua Stacy. I believe they both might be restreaming this. If not, feel free to go check out their channels. Nonetheless, like, subscribe, and share. We will be discussing feminism helps the family court system. Ghosty, if you'd like to start with your opening statement, please.
Okay, sure. Thank you. All right, so today feminism is mostly a social fight. It is the fight to dismantle especially harmful traditional gender norms and biases. And I believe that although there are innate differences between men and women, we actually have more in common than differences. This includes parenting. Gender does not determine whether someone will be a good parent or who will be a better parent. A common traditional gender misconception is that women naturally make good mothers, caretakers, and are born as nurturing. This is not inherently true. Many factors like one's upbringing and own parents determines one's ability to parent, but not gender. It is due to this traditional gender bias that mothers used to be highly favored and prioritized in the family court systems. Court systems have since evolved out of this bias to a modern standard of presumption of joint custody, where the sole consideration is the best interest of the child and prohibits automatic gender bias. I will argue this change is largely in part because of feminism. The first reason is recognizing that simply being a woman does not make you a naturally good parent. Another reason is women entering the workforce and therefore not having the ability to be the sole caretaker of the children. Now, we can argue whether women entering the workforce is good or bad. I would obviously argue for its benefits, but that is not the discussion today. The fact is women make up almost 50% of the workforce today, and therefore require their jobs to survive and provide for themselves and their family. I'm not arguing that the court systems are perfect. There are definitely still changes to be made, but feminism is not what's harming fathers. So what is harming fathers? It's sexist, traditional, gender norms, which lead men to believe it is useless to fight for custody for their children. Studies indicate that fathers are simply not asking for custody, since many men still believe that the court system is inherently prejudiced, therefore believing it is a waste of time and money. Another factor is that almost 90% of custody cases are settled and do not go to trial. So these custody arrangements are largely agreements between the parents. A Massachusetts study examined 2,100 fathers who asked for custody and pushed aggressively to win it. Of those 2,100, 92% either received full or joint custody, with mothers receiving only full custody 7% of the time. Another study where 8% of fathers asked for custody showed that of that 8%, 79% of them received either sole or joint custodies. These studies show that when fathers fight for custody, most of the time they get it. So despite what many believe, feminism is not an anti-men movement by definition. It, in fact, helps fathers achieve the equality they have been fighting for in the courts for decades.
Perfect. Thank you, Ghosty. And Joshua, to you, please.
All right. Well. So feminism didn't help family courts. It captured the family courts. When an ideology captures a system, the outcomes reflect the ideology, not fairness, not data, not equality. Feminism helps the family court system the same way that sugar helps diabetes, by expanding it, inflaming it, making it worse for everyone involved. So to get us on the same page, we've got 4 waves of feminism. Now, I spent some time researching this ahead of time, trying to make sure I'm using the right language, and I do hope that folks will correct me and make sure that we're all using the same words to describe the same thing. First wave feminism was basically sold as civil rights, voting, property rights, contracts. Okay, that's not particularly controversial. Fine. Second wave, now we want to lower the standard in the workplace and remove barriers. Okay, fine. Third wave is when things get completely weird. The shift goes from equality to identity, hierarchy. We're talking about oppression narratives. There's collectively groups that are guilty and collectively groups that are innocent. All individuality is lost. And that's where ideology started drifting away from the real world outcomes and into moral storytelling. Now, with fourth wave feminism, and this is the joke that writes itself, women can be men now and occupy the same protected category that women fought for. It's not progress, it's programming. And when a system drifts so far from stable behavior, we call it regression. It's a sign that the code needs to be replaced, reverted. Feminism now is just a set of cascading failures in the courtroom. So, heard some real interesting points here from Ghosty about the way that fathers apparently can get custody whenever they want it, or with some much more generous standard than the courts are actually applying at present. The premise here is we need to harm people that look like the historic oppressor, even if they themselves never oppressed anyone, and even if they themselves are struggling. So even if the data is showing that outcomes hurt everyone, this includes men, women, children, everybody involved, except for, of course, the attorneys and those that are benefiting from the economic engine here. This isn't correction. This would probably be a good point to split the sales pitch for feminism and what the goals were versus the outcomes. And I think we can divorce the two and acknowledge that equality under the law is a human ideal that goes through 250 years of our jurisprudence. Like we love that as a country. That's where our laws have always been pointing. But in application, what we've done is basically allow 8 ideologies to replace courts, and now we've got an absolute nightmare. Now, I think we've got plenty to work off of here. I've got a little bit more, but let's just point to one really interesting argument that also Ghosty brought up here. So feminism's foundational claim was that women bear most of the child rearing burden, and that was the justification for everything. Well, women's lives are harder because motherhood is hard. Okay, well, fine, but a massive percentage of women are not having children. The ones that are having children aren't having as many, and with the various household appliances and a modern economy, that overall contribution is a lot less effort. So we still have lower standards for women in academia. We still have lower standards for women in the workplace. We still have all sorts of programs working to help and support them on the idea that they're having children, but they're not even having children. So I think if we're looking at a system that has more broken families, that has more children without fathers, we're watching basically what we've watched is the government is taking the place of the father and kicking the dad out. So when we have fathers punted out of their children's lives, when we have families broken up, and when we have things like no-fault divorce that primarily not just create an easy out, which is, the arguments that a feminist would go to is to say, well, all of these women are in abused relationships. But by and large, these no-fault divorces are more along the lines of, I just didn't like the way I felt anymore. And at that point, fine, no one should be trapped. But the institution of marriage is a commitment, not just a passing convenience. The ultimate beneficiary of the marriage actually isn't the couple, it's the children. The purpose of marriage is to bring children into the home. So when we're watching the institutions that are supposed to protect families literally rip fathers out of their children's lives for what? This isn't good for their children. This isn't good for anyone in society, other than perhaps, again, the institutions that are engaging with it. With that, I don't have nothing else.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As a kind reminder to the audience, we will get through the debate. We will move into closing statements. We will read and respond to your kind super chats. And then, of course, we will move into open panel dumpster fire. So if you have something to say, you will have the ability to jump on panel and say it. Lady and gentlemen, I leave the floor to you.
Okay. So I heard you saying that feminism is doing a lot of harm. The only harm that I really heard, like specifically, was that the whole no fault divorce thing is that basically women can split up families without a legit reason to do so. Other than that, where exactly is the feminism harming the court systems? Like how is it tearing, in your words, tearing children apart from their fathers?
Well, so you pointed in your opening to something that I'm just going to assume that you meant to present accurately. So 50-50 custody is not the modern custody agreement. Now, Kentucky recently switched to a rebuttable presumption of 50-50 custody. And the divorce rates in Kentucky went down by 25%. Now, to be fair, nationwide over that same time period, they went down by 17%, but there's an 8% swing, which makes you wonder why. Why would that seemingly that one change have that impact? Fact of the matter is, the family courts. Are you familiar with the? And I don't want to belabor it if you're already familiar with it, but are you familiar with the Duluth model?
No, I don't think so. Not from the name of it.
Yeah, so some academics got together and put together a doctrine that said, well, if a woman is claiming there's violence, then we should probably believe her. And it created this foundation that essentially an application is all men are guilty, all women are innocent, believe all women. And beyond that, a real tangible flashpoint for me, a couple years back, there was a sitting Fifth Circuit judge, Kyle Duncan, and he was at Stanford, and he was going to be doing a presentation on, I think, free speech or something like that. And the dean of DEI, along with the whole audience, or at least the majority of it, heckled him to the point where he couldn't get in a word edgewise. Afterwards, he described it as a bizarre therapy session he did not want to participate in. And Stanford, again, a well-respected law school, fired the DEI dean, fine, but that doesn't change the fact that we have a whole bunch of attorneys that are in this pipeline now that came from academic bubbles like that, where they put ideology over logic and reason. And with over 250 years of jurisprudence on the books, I don't think we should be abandoning that for zealotry.
Wait, but isn't the harmful ideology the previous ideology that favored and prioritized mothers?
So that's not the prior one, that's the present one.
Well, okay, so you did say it's not, there is no federal 50-50 law, right? But it is 20 states. It is 20 states. This is a more modern thing. Feminism is also a more modern thing. So, and also you see that most of the states that do start at 50-50 are blue states, which are more liberal feminist kind of people. So, and I do have a map of them if you want me to like actually tell you which states exactly, but so it's 20 states. This is something that feminists, liberals are fighting for, is to start a joint custody, not have any gender bias in the courts, therefore helping fathers. And if there is still that bias, I would argue that is from the previous harmful traditional gender norms that are still like lingering in judges and lawyers' minds. But feminism will dismantle that, like ultimately, ideally.
Feminism at an academic level said, let's abandon the concept of competence and let's abandon literally the laws that we've established and lower standards and literally codify preferential treatment for women in the workforce. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you at least agree that that's one of the things feminism did?
In the workforce?
Right. So, for example, with affirmative action and diversity hiring.
Yeah, no, it's not coddling or lowering standards. It's giving an equal opportunity. So women who are being hired don't have they're not hiring unqualified people for these jobs, right? They're not like, well, you're not qualified, but you're a woman or you're black, so you're hired. They still have to meet all the qualifications, but there's sometimes now a certain number of people, which we can argue if that's good or bad. But the fact is, DEI is just giving an equal opportunity to sexes, religions, races, homosexuality.
Well, so I'm talking
whatever.
about feminism in the family courts. So let's bring this directly to the fact that law is not based off of vibes or emotions. We have this whole concept of if you can tell the story the right way, then that's how you win over a court. And that is taken hold. I gave you an example of an event that happened at Stanford. It's generally respected as a high quality business and law school. And they had an entire class like a classroom full of students heckle a sitting Third Circuit judge or Fifth Circuit judge. For those not familiar, the Fifth Circuit, once you go up from the circuit, that's the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So a judge sitting at the second highest level of court in our court system is getting verbally assaulted using harm language, right, by the dean of DEI. And then the classroom goes out and they go past the bar and they go become attorneys and they go become judges. And I think that's deeply problematic because they're not bound by the law, and we need to be bound by the law. No?
How are they not bound by the law?
So all right, fair. So can you imagine a scenario where someone going to law school, going to a presentation with a circuit judge, heckling them? Does that sound like an academic experience, a lecturing, learning opportunity, or does it sound like tribal pack behavior?
You could categorize it as that, but ultimately, isn't it up to the judge to withhold the law and reprimand the lawyers who aren't doing it properly?
So the point here is the institution that feeds us lawyers, where lawyers come from. They go to academia, right? They go to get their undergrad, then they go to law school, then they pass the bar, right? While they were in law school, this behavior was supported by an entire dean, and they didn't fail the whole class. They didn't make any of the students apologize to the judge. They showed just utmost disregard off of these very emotioned experiences. Again, the Kyle Duncan, the judge, he said it felt like a bizarre therapy session he did not want to participate in. So do you think that after those students passed the bar, then they all of a sudden found morals?
I'm confused with what the behavior is exactly. You're just saying heckling and using harm language. Like, are you saying they were arguing out of their emotions and not like the law or something like that? Or what? Right, what is the heckling or the problematic?
So fair question. So imagine, if you will, I'm assuming you've been to some college and there's a lecture hall.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you're a student, you're going there, you're going to see this judge present on something. And then cutting off the judge's presentation, not allowing him to give the presentation, the whole audience basically hijacked it and started shouting at him. And they assumed control over the room, and they wouldn't let him say anything. And then when he asked for a dean, they got all mad and they said, "What makes you think she's not a dean?" And then the dean of DI says, "Is the juice worth the squeeze?" And it made no sense at all what was going on, other than we had an ideology infest an Ivy League school, and that we've let the lowered standards get so low to the point where we think we can heckle a circuit court an appellate judge. It's wild.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I feel like I would have to witness this to make a really determination. Like, the other argument you could say is that these were just really passionate students who are doing their job, which is like arguing to be future lawyers, right? And speaking out and you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what being a student is. But I wasn't there. I would have to see exactly how this was handled. You might be right. I could agree with you that they were totally out of line and maybe should have been disciplined or something, but I'm not. like, I can't really tell from your description. But I still don't really know what this has to do with like the family courts, though.
Okay, so because where do family court attorneys and judges come from? Academia. And we've seen a shift in the way that the courts have been leaning on things. There's this at the appellate level, a lot more of the time it's very by the rules textualism, and at trial court levels, it's very narrative driven. So these attorneys go to school and they learn how to argue and advocate and push and assert. And what ends up happening is they end up pushing every line known to man because they think the ends justify the means. And when you lower this down, go ahead.
You still have like a referee there, though. That's like what the judge is for. And lots of times they use case law. Like they're like, it's not like lawyers are just arguing like out of their ass. You know what I mean? Like you might not agree with how they're doing it or something, but it's up to judges to withhold the law. So if a lawyer is out of line, they will get reprimanded, and it's up to the judge to determine what's right and wrong.
So how would we? So if a future judge went to Stanford and they were engaged in high activism because feminism and progressivism make them lean that way, and they're being taught that use the law as a tool of activism, how does that not feed directly into right? How do we avoid that dripping into judges? Because judges come from the pool of lawyers almost universally. So if we have a major sort of significant generations of ideologically driven alumni coming out of high caliber law schools, and then they go out and they become attorneys, and then they become judges, aren't they going to be, if they're activists while they're in school and they're activists as attorneys, wouldn't they be activists on the bench?
I mean, even if they were, I have 2 points to that. So first of all, they still have to uphold the law, like no matter what. So even if it goes against their ideology, they still have to uphold the law. Judges don't have to do that.
No, in fact, if
I mean, it's up to their judgment, but ultimately, like, a judge will get in deep trouble for not handling, like, there's mistrials,
you can still appeal if they interpreted a law outside of case law precedents. If they're not sticking to the guidelines that the state provides, so on and so forth. You could still appeal it and go upwards.
And secondly, my whole argument is that feminism is impacting legislation and leading to fathers getting more joint shared custody for their children, because legislation only started in the late 1970s. And like you said, we only have 20 states today still, which are mostly blue states again, that start at 50-50 joint custody. So, and it's because of things like feminism, women going into the workforce, also seeing women as just not naturally caregivers. Like we also see that women are getting more fair, and this still needs to be worked on, but we're seeing women getting more fair sentences when it comes to them being abusers, like women getting arrested. I don't even think it was like illegal to hit your husband until like a couple decades ago. This is all because of feminism. That's my argument, and that is actually helping men and fathers.
So there's one father in West Virginia who had a judge go so rogue that he had to take it to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. What she did is, I'll explain the scenario so that the claim makes sense. And this is a feminist empowered female judge. So in case we're wondering what the impact is, right now I have a female judge in a family court acting like an activist instead of acting like an attorney, and instead of acting like a judge, instead of acting like someone who took an oath to the Constitution and has some morals. What she did is, so one year or so after the divorce, and it's Gibson v. Goldston, it's in the Fourth Circuit. This judge heard a motion. The ex-wife said, he didn't give me the things, the umbrella stand, the DVDs, the whatever. Okay, fine. So the judge then says, sir, what's your address? Then the judge, the bailiff, the ex-wife, and the ex-husband all go to the ex-husband's house, and the judge conducts a search and seizure. And the Fourth Circuit said, absolutely not. You can't do that. In fact, that's so bad. This thing that normally protects you on almost anything you do, called judicial immunity, you lose it. And during the oral argument, they said this wasn't an isolated incident. They'd done this 11 times. So when we have judges literally leaving the bench to go conduct executive searches, which is a violation of the separation of powers, to go out and unicide defend the ex-wife, what would you make of that? You're saying that the judge has to abide by the law? She didn't.
Well,
And a lot of guys get steamrolled
eventually,
because they can't push back. I'm sorry, go ahead.
eventually they did get caught though, right? Is that what you're saying?
The other 10 did not.
Okay, yeah, and that's bad. But I'm sure I could present you like 10 other cases where judges were very unfair to women and whatever, not seeing. No, that never happens.
I'm wondering if because you're slightly like circling around the scope of the prompt, like you're talking about judge behavior, lawyers, what they're learning, so on and so forth. But I think the prompt is specified more around the actual family court system and what is going on within it, and like what's coming out of it, right? Versus judge behavior, lawyer behavior. I can see where you're leading into it, but it's still like, I think if Ghosty would have known you wanted to talk about judges' behavior and lawyer behavior, or like academia and what they're learning or doing, I think she would have prepared a little more differently. But I think, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Ghosty, but I feel like the prompt is scoped around what is actually happening within the court systems with fathers and mothers and child custody cases, and the current like split, because most states are going to 50-50 default, child support calculations, so on and so forth. I think up to you, Ghost. I just
think
wanted
the
to bring that
last
forward.
point is kind of fair. Yeah, I definitely didn't look into like judges, how feminism is affecting judges, but I see it as a fair point. I mean, like this, you could say that for like any judge's ideology, though. Like, we could say that before feminism, which was like mostly all male judges, that women were given unfair circumstances, yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? So, like, if we have super radicalized judges, I obviously am going to agree that's bad. I don't know if that's the typical standard, though.
I think feminism is an extreme ideology. Like, the fact of the matter is, it's very strange to me that we're talking about the family court, right? And who's in a family court? A judge, attorneys, and families. So we're talking about judges. We're talking about attorneys. These are the ones in courts making the moves, making the decisions, making money off of this, making these decisions. And so if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. But that's the machinery that makes this happen. And I think that we've got a wide sweeping problem because of this huge, huge deluge of bad ideas.
I don't think it's because of feminism. Like I said, many studies have shown that when fathers actually fight for custody.
Don't do this one.
Go ahead. When fathers fight for custody, they get it. They get joint custody. It's rare to get sole custody.
They do.
But when fathers fight for custody, they get it more than 50% of the time. It's closer to 70% of the time. But most of the times, custody arrangements don't go to trial. These things are usually settled outside of the courts. And fathers have been told, because of people like you, that it's a waste of money. They're going to be looked against. They're going to be discriminated against. So there's no point in fighting for their children, when really that is just a lie. And that is what's harming them.
So the broad data supports what I'm about to say. I am going to go to my personal experience, which is I've spent over $600,000, or rather on my ex-wife and I, between both sides, over $600,000 on litigation. I have a custody agreement right now that says I can see my daughter 4 times a week. I've seen her less than 5 hours in the last 5 years. It's not because I haven't been trying. It isn't because I haven't spent a ton of money on it. It's because my ex-wife is represented by a law firm that is exclusively female attorneys who operate with extreme ideologies, and they got in front of a bench with a judge that also has extreme ideologies. Fact of the matter is, my situation isn't unusual except for the dollar amounts at play. It's very normal for this to happen. In fact, a statistic maybe you've contended with, men are apparently 9x more likely to take their own lives after a divorce than women. What do you make of that? Is that because of how fair they're being treated?
I think men are just more willing to take their lives in general. I don't know if that's because of testosterone or what, to be honest, but I think that's just true in general for men.
So you don't think that men are pulled from the lives of their children and literally just ripped away from everything they build for isn't being ripped away from them?
I'm not
right?
denying that happens.
You're not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead. I know that happens, yeah, but I don't think feminism is to blame for that. There's other problems in the court system, and I think that a large part is because we are still catching up with modern times. So, there was something else I wanted to say about. Are you willing to share what state you live in? If not, that's okay.
I live in Nevada. The case is Virginia. I'm currently suing 4 sitting state judges over this.
So Utah is has the lowest amount of father custody.
So all of your stats are premised. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just saying, a lot of these states are left behind. They don't have the 50-50 start at joint custody arrangements, which is what I would fight for as a feminist.
No, feminists chose the no fault divorce. Feminists chose lowering standards. Feminists chose the Duluth model that basically starts off assuming men are the problem and women are not. Feminism has already done the damage. It would be nice if it could clean it up.
There's
would
no
that
fault
be a
divorce. There's no fault divorce, but there's also no alimony anymore. Less than 10% of marriages are awarded alimony, and if it is, it's temporary. It's usually reimbursement or restitution alimony, which only lasts a couple years.
You're making some claims very inconsistent with the universe I'm familiar with.
Alimony is very rare to even get. You have to prove that, for instance, and I'll use my anecdotal just as a kind of an idea of why they don't allow it anymore. I was working when I divorced, so even my lawyer told me, if you even want to get alimony, we might be able to get some, a few months supplementation to just make you right and let you kind of tier into your new financial situation. But she said it's incredibly difficult to get. So basically alimony is viewed as only supplemental. So even if the mother wasn't working for 20 years, right, and she was a stay-at-home mom, the judge would still expect the woman to go to work post-divorce, but they would allow some alimony supplemental to aid in her getting back into the workforce
in the gap.
To basically it's a gap plus supplement, but it's not just handed out like candy the way it once was, because feminism, most women are working, making lots of money and doing genuinely or generally pretty good.
Yeah, in Texas, you can't even get alimony if you haven't been married for 10 years. That's a new law that they put in. I don't know the exact year, but the alimony considerations are the length of the couple's marriage, each partner's financial contributions to the marriage, the income disparity between the couple, each partner's age and health, each partner's realistic employability chances based on his or her skills and experience, if the couple has a child support order, how much one parent is paying the other in child support, the standard of living established during the couple's marriage, and each partner's non-economic contributions to the marriage. So those are some considerations. And like I said, it's awarded in roughly 10% of all divorce cases. Alimony payments average around $1,200 a month and are typically temporary, with 40% ending within 5 years. That's the data I have. But so even then, yeah, you could say women are getting divorces and stuff, but I don't, of course, divorce is going to, if you actually look at the men and women outcomes, women usually end up worse after divorce than men do.
Well, that's because they're bad with money.
Do you have data for that?
Yeah, because they get into a lot more debt. right?
They
When
actually
a divorce
don't.
happens,
Actually,
let me
men hold
finish,
more debt
if
than
I
women
may.
do.
If I may, what happens after divorce is typically the man will cut back on his spending. Women may or may not. Guys will live on an air mattress in a basement with a TV and a folding chair and be mocked for it for their and women just don't. And so the fact of the matter is, if you look at literally who holds consumer debt, it's by and large a different group than the men.
That's not true.
Eh,
The only
I look
only
forward to getting the
category
fact on that one.
the
Go ahead.
only category of debt that women hold more in is for education. Men hold more credit card loan debt, auto loan debt, personal loan debt, all kind of debt. Men hold more debt in except for education. Women hold more like college debt than men. That's the only
And who
category.
and who primarily pays alimony when it happens?
It's
And who's primarily homeless?
3 out of 100 men get 3 out of 100 alimony awards are to men. So it's 97% women, yeah.
So I want to go back to something a little earlier. So I said there's this judge that did this illegal home search. You said, well, at least they were caught. And I said, well, there's 10 that weren't. You're like, well, but at least one got caught.
I said
Is that
that's
roughly
bad.
what happened?
Of course, people who break the law, I am against. But that's why there is a law in place.
Right. But here, 10 people didn't get any justice because they couldn't afford to deal with the system that was thrust upon them. And so my question to you is, if the roles were reversed, let's say there were 11 essays. So 11 instances and 10, they got away with it, but we got one. Would we then pat ourselves on the back and say that that's a good job?
This
and that we're
happens
okay
all the
with this?
time. This happens all the time, but we understand that the court is broken and there are things to fix in the court, but I would not blame feminism for either of those situations.
Okay.
If you want to blame that our court system is largely driven by money and what lawyers you can afford, yeah, I would blame that. I'd say that's a pretty bad thing that our court system needs to start to work on. I don't know if feminism is to blame though.
Right. And I'm saying that activist academia programs are creating activist attorneys who then get to argue in front of activist judges, and the whole thing becomes a closed circuit where there is no neutral trier of fact. It's just one tribe beating on another tribe. And you seem to reject any of that framing at wholesale. Like I literally I gave you example, a case I gave as an example. This judge went on a robeless, shoeless search of a person's house and thought that judicial immunity covers it, and said she's done this 10 more times before that. And it seems like you're just glossing over that. That's kind of a big deal for me.
Again, that it's illegal what they did. So, I mean, I don't have a case off the top of my head, but I'm sure I could find throughout the country judges doing illegal things that put women in harm's way in these situations. And, hopefully they get caught. I'm against all of that.
What I'm saying is the derivative threat on this is feminism, though. And all I'm hearing from you is a generic, no, it's not.
It sounds like a radicalized kind of idea, that like what you're mentioning, which obviously there are radical feminists that are harmful, and I'm against radical feminism, but just basic feminism, which is fighting for gender equality and social respect pretty much for men, for women. I don't understand how that would be affecting courts. Also, like, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to mind wipe every lawyer, every judge? I mean, maybe you could start fighting for more conservatives to get into law or something. Like, you know what I mean? There's nothing you can really do about people's ideology. The only thing we have is legislations and laws to keep people within proper boundaries.
So no, you just described exactly the problem, right? We do have a solution for people with radical ideologies. It's what we're doing right now. We're talking, not legislating them into a box where they're forced by the power of the state and the gun and men with boots to comply with the worldview that you ascribe. That's tyranny.
I don't think so. I think protecting men, like the guy that you said got screwed over by that one judge who was breaking the law, is a good thing. Protecting people like him from judges who break the law.
Right. So if let's just imagine we found out that every law student that roasted marshmallows in law school was just the worst. They were just completely the worst judges ever. They don't play by the rules. And we knew which judges did this. Would we just ignore this data point? Because a through line on feminism is a starting point that men and women are different and not different. They're not different because they need to be treated the same, but they are different in the sense that men need to apparently lower the standards for women. And it's not balanced. And so there's this inherent balance that never gets resolved until you get all the way to the end. And so what I'm not hearing you say is anything about acknowledging, for example, well, maybe this will make it cleaner, right? A judge is supposed to be a neutral trier of fact. They see two or more parties come up, they listen to it, they don't have a dog in the fight, they say this, that, the other thing, boom. That's what we want. Yeah. And because that is so important, one of the judicial ethics is that they must avoid even the appearance of impartiality. Mm-hmm. And the rhetoric of feminism is men are the oppressor and we need to be protected and we need to, and it inherently creates a bias. Do you not, at least an appearance of a bias, if you're saying things like, you know, I mean, do you see where I'm going with this, or am I not being clear enough?
I mean, women in the past have been oppressed, and there are still lingering effects of that, which still affect women today. And women are more vulnerable typically in marriages and relationships. So yes, we still fight for some protections. I don't think that's unfair.
I'm gonna shift this just a bit. What do you believe that women from the law are disadvantaged in any way in American society?
From a law standpoint, no, but I would say that there are probably some inherent social judgments that still affect juries in situations, like how a jury will judge like a woman's testimony differently from a man's, like little things like that. But you know, and it also goes the same way for men. So it's just like feminism to me is just fighting sexism in general. I don't like sexist bias at all. I think it really fucks with people's minds when they think about the people they're dealing with. So that's like my fight in feminism. I think a lot of like normal feminists agree with this idea.
Well, so are men victims or oppressors?
They can be both. I wouldn't like whole judge all of
because
men.
let me ask you this. Do you understand why folks sort of with my framework literally don't understand? There's sort of this internal contradiction. You're saying you want equality but preferential treatment, and equal and preferential are not the same.
When did I say preferential treatment?
So I think that we've tipped the scale so hard it's gone in the other direction. So you're saying feminism is women needing to be protected, right?
In certain circumstances, yeah.
Okay, from who?
Lots of times from men, yeah.
Okay, so why is it gendered?
Power systems. Why is it gender? Well, feminism is specifically talking about women. That's not saying that men aren't victims in other situations too. But if we're talking about feminism, we are specifically talking about women's protections. So that's not to say like, oh, men aren't victims ever. Men are only the oppressors. Men can't be victims. But when we're talking about feminism, we're specifically just focusing on protecting women from vulnerable whatever situations and stuff.
So why should a 25-year-old woman today get preferential treatment in the workplace for hiring or in academia?
Why should they? I don't.
Yeah, I mean that's a feminist win, right?
I mean, it was fair decades ago, but now we're pretty dominant in the academic, so I wouldn't even mind if we did it the other way around a little bit and started preferring men in academia a little bit to balance it out, because women are like kind of overwhelming the education system.
So how can you promote both?
Equality. That's the promotion.
Well, no, if you're promoting something, right? I've got a stack of red and a stack of blue. If I'm promoting the blue stack, I'm not promoting the red stack, or vice versa. You can't promote both.
I
Like
mean,
the whole
you can promote without demoting. So you can promote something without demoting something else.
So the whole academia model works currently partially off of the supply and demand of, they have X amount of seats that they can fill in an academic calendar, and they try to sell those seats. So if they promote one gender, that is, because it's a sum zero, it means they're going to have less of the other one, which is why I don't think you can promote both. I think, like, because they're countering each other.
That's what I'm saying. I think at this point, I would totally be for doing a more promotion of men now in education specifically, and programs like nursing programs and stuff, because we see these fields are way over dominated by women now. Because of the promotions, that did help us, and I would say it was beneficial for most women. So yeah.
What about not even going that far? What about just ending preferential treatment in academia and in the workforce and in government contracting and across the board? Just say, fuck it, we're done with gender.
Again, like you say,
isn't that equality?
You say it's preferential treatment. The whole point is to benefit society. It's not like we're just
No, it's not.
It is.
Having a more
educated society is a better society.
Well, so right. So I said, so this is at the intersection, I think, of where we disagree.
Okay.
I'm on team. Yeah, it's real interesting because I find it really interesting when you can find that fault line. I think if we're really doing equality, and I believe that you care, right? Okay, we want just fuck gender. We're done with it. Everybody's a human. We have no more prejudices. We're all colorblind and gender blind. And okay, everything that you're feeling when you hear me say that you want, say, no, we still need to. I think that's the friction point. So I'm really curious to know more about that.
I understand your point. I do. But I do just think it's, if we're talking about specifically education, I do think it is important to, if men are currently lacking in education and they need help, I don't mind doing that. And when we're talking about like promoting, it's not like people say this with DEI, with like race a lot. It's like, oh, we have DEI programs for race. Okay, it's still overwhelmingly white people. It's just now there's just a little bit more minorities that are in the group. It's still like overwhelmingly white people though for most of these like programs and stuff. So it's like you can call it promoting. It's just kind of like a little boost. That's how I see it. So, and with education, I just don't see that as a bad thing. If there's a certain gender or certain disparity for some reason where people are lacking in education for whatever reason, and I would even say we could look at our grade school education systems. Lots of men have said that education systems don't cater to the way men learn. This could be the disparity in why men aren't going to college or aren't as successful in college, which therefore would, I think, deem necessary a little promotion for men in school.
A few thoughts. One, the reason why men are not going to college as much, and that's been a 4-decade trend, is because they've been pushed out. It's not that they haven't participated. It's not even that they're not capable, right? You have folks that are performing very well, not being admitted because other folks are being preferred. Now, on top of that, a lot of guys are just going into the trades. A lot of guys have said, look, I'm just trying to make a buck. Let me learn a skill, go make a buck. And they're not racking up any school debt. I'm a college dropout. For most of my career, I've done pretty well. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an engineer. I'm a self-starter, all of these other wonderful things. But for me, college wasn't necessary for me to be able to find success in the workforce. So a part of the foundational problem I have with any sort of equity-based program is they operate off of a sum zero model, meaning there's only X amount of opportunity and we need to choose who can have the opportunity, not how can we create more opportunity. So I think what's actually happening is a lot of women are getting stuck with debt on education that isn't actually proving to be as valuable as they thought, partially because they were encouraged to go into programs to learn things that are not actually useful to know. And then a lot of guys bypassing that altogether are finding more financial stability and just going down a different career path. Like I really do, like my personal life mission is to democratize access to information, technology, and opportunity for everyone, which is a part of why I get so offended at anything where it's discriminatory based off of fill in the blank, because the ultimate discrimination is socioeconomic. The folks that are poor stay poor. They are denied opportunities. That's the class that's really getting left behind. So every time that we want to polish this up and say, oh, it's this group, oh, it's that group, like, no, it's the folks that are stuck constantly behind that can't get ahead and need a little bit more of a leg up. And, you know, having a little bit different melanin profile at Harvard doesn't really change that.
Okay. There's something I was gonna say. I forget though.
It'll come back.
Yeah. Do we want to kind of go back to the family stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
We
I
got
feel
a
like
little sidetracked.
I wanted to keep like reeling it back in, but at the same time, I'm hoping that like Josh, you would wrap it back in, like into the prompt, because I feel like we're just veering off. I understand that feminism ideology kind of touches a lot of different things, but Ghosty gave a lot of really great information on her opening statement, and I'd love for you guys to dive into that and actually argue those pieces.
All right. Well, it's just a general criticism on that point. The whole notion that fathers aren't getting custody because they're not asking for it is batshit crazy. So I didn't get those stats ahead of this. I'm happy to look at whatever sources you have. That is not at all what's going on out there. In fact, the other story, the real story, and the Kentucky divorce numbers tell it, is when you disincentivize the no-fault divorce with the 50-50 custody, the biggest tool that women will use to beat dad over the head is the kids. And so with 50-50 rebuttable presumption of 50-50 custody, you disarm that weapon, which is why I suspect those divorce rates went down. So I have never seen anything that supports the notion that men can get custody if they want. And there's any number of men that I know personally and otherwise that just die on that hill. The reason why these guys settle these, right? You say, oh, it usually settles. It settles because they know they're going to get their ass handed to them by a rigged system. To go back to the prompt, rigged system based off of feminism, especially second and third wave.
That is the problem, that people like you keep telling men that it's just no use to waste your time and your money and blah, 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 blah. But when you actually look at the stats of men,
why do you think I should lie to them?
Because when you actually look at the stats of men who do fight for custody, most of the time they end up getting at least joint custody.
And what I'm telling you right now is I believe that the stat is complete bullshit. And if you send it to me, I'll be happy to look at it. That is so far disconnected from reality. I have a hard time humoring it beyond that.
No, I reviewed this study a long time ago, or not a long time ago, but like maybe 2 years ago. And it shows pretty strongly that the more active a man is in fighting for custody, the more likely he's going to do it. Also, if the couple during divorce settles outside of court, they're more likely to have like 50-50. But the bulk of men that the study shows they don't file for counter, they don't file for custody, they don't want custody, and of course, if you don't show up or if you don't counterclaim or do anything like that, then it's just going to happen whatever the original filing person wants. But yeah, the study shows very strongly that most are just not showing up. But if they do get what they are looking for.
Or it's agreed to, or it's just agreed to.
I'm very interested in seeing the study. And anytime it's agreed to, the guy knows he's going to get destroyed in court. And it's going to be a vicious, ugly system where they can go ahead. 85% of people get married without a prenup, which means when that divorce happens, which doesn't need to have a proof, but they argue for more, punitive awards have been happening for a while. And maybe, I'm going to go as far as acknowledge there've been some shifts on it. I like seeing the Kentucky shift. I like that we're even having the discussion about the 50-50 custody. That's a nice balance that's going to buy some peace. But the fact of the matter is, at a minimum for the last 15, 20 years, if a guy wants to go, he knows he's going to lose. And if he fights, it's going to hurt like hell. And you shouldn't, this is the core problem. A man shouldn't have to fight to be in his kid's life. If he wants to show up and love his kid and be involved, the court should want that and support that, but they don't.
They should. I agree. But like again, one of the key elements I feel like coming from feminism is women feeling like they have, and I know it sucks to call it a burden because being a mother is obviously like a blessing and everything, but lots of women kind of feel burdened with the full duty of taking care of their children, with men kind of not stepping up and helping out. I'm not saying that like men do that on the regular or anything, but back in the day, lots of women, a big argument from feminism was women feeling burdened with taking basically 100% care of children without help from the men. So I don't know how you could say that the feminist argument is the thing that's hurting fathers in court. I agree that we could say it's the money thing. Maybe there should be more help for struggling fathers, getting money for lawyers, like mothers do. That's kind of like a men's activist thing that I totally support. But yeah, I don't know. And again, like most of these states that don't have the 50-50 are red states that
Why are
are
you even bringing that up?
anti-feminist.
No, why are you even bringing that up?
Because they're anti-feminist.
No,
So
here's the
why
thing.
aren't those courts doing that? If you say it's a feminist problem, but the most feminist states start at the 50-50 custody, then that's my argument.
No, so I reject the idea of categorizing states as a feminist state or not a feminist state. I think folks are too interesting for that. For example, in the great state of Virginia, a lot of it's very red, but Northern Virginia is very blue. So overall, it becomes a purple state. It's
Same
an
with
accurate,
VA, yeah.
right? So I think that's painting with too broad of a brush. You know, so I want to go back to one of the first things you said in that about there is, I think it's perfectly fair to say that being a mother is a burden. Doesn't mean it's not worth it. Doesn't mean it's a miracle. But I think a lot of times women do try to tell themselves, "Oh, this is supposed to be such a blessing," but like, it's fucking hard. Like, these are tiny humans. They're literally tearing a body open at times. My first time, with my daughter's birth, we're doing the like the pre-birth course, and they're like, "Do you know what an episiotomy is?" And I was like, "That's a terrible thing." For those that don't know what it is, go ahead and Google it later. All that to say, yes, it's a challenge, man. Don't Google it. Yeah.
You'll never undo that.
But like the whole point is, like, the whole foundation of marriage was meant to help with what you're talking about there. Back in the day, before women had the right to vote, obviously a better time in some ways, maybe not because of that reason, but women could also take their men to court if they didn't pay the bills, because that was codified into our culture, was the men had the obligation to actually take care of the wife like that, because that was the family unit we were protecting. So at its core, marriage exists not for mom and dad, but for the kids. And so why do we have family courts to enforce that men take care of their children? Well, to make sure that men take care of their children. That's important. The perversion we've arrived at is the system that was supposed to encourage that has now become the obstacle of that. And the engineer in me just can't reconcile that. It's so hard to wrap my head around.
Weren't you the one earlier, you mentioned something about tyranny though? And the law kind of keeping everybody into boundaries that they shouldn't have to be and stuff like that. That's how I feel about no fault divorce. If people don't want to be together, they shouldn't stay together. And lots of times you even see, like, obviously, yes, a divorce is hard for kids, but if two parents are living together that are just in turmoil, kids watch that. That's going to be their example for when they go on. It's actually better to give them a display of a healthy co-parenting relationship than two parents who just aren't getting along, aren't showing affection towards each other in the same house. So
right. Well, so and where we disagree foundationally, and this isn't a moral judgment, isn't whatever. It's, I think the sky is this and you think it's that. Mm-hmm. Is, I think when I got married, my first marriage was in a Mormon temple, very, very conservative. And that commitment was for better or worse, all of the betters and all of the worse. Now, my ex-wife has a degree in we'll call it a feminist category, and consistent with the numbers, she was the one that filed for divorce. Imagine my surprise. I marry this woman, ultra conservative, blah, 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 boom. So bring this up because the model was designed to protect, making sure that the mother can take care of the children and the family stays intact. So with feminism, what we've done is this no fault divorce. I agree with you. Fine. If people don't like each other, they shouldn't be with each other. But at that point, I believe those two people are having a moral failing where they're unable to reconcile with their marital covenant, and they should double down so the kids don't have to suffer. Like you're saying, the kids should have a parents at home that are loving and providing a stable environment. But even if they don't, the outcomes are still better for the kids if the parents stay together than if they have a contentious relationship. I'm not saying I like it. I'm a super pro marriage. I'm super pro family. I'd like to see everybody get along. That's the world I'd like to live in.
So another feminist tenet, which is why you're saying people aren't having babies, which is why people aren't having babies, is because people are having babies later. They're not getting married super young with kind of the first or second person they're with and rushing it in order to find more successful relationships so that they don't have to go through divorce in this. So like in the beginning, you said that we're not having babies, blah, blah, blah. If we don't replace the baby boomers, that's not really us not having babies. It's just there's a lot of fucking baby boomers. And if just we're having babies a little bit later and we're having a little bit less kids, that doesn't equal no kids. Like people see that if we're not meeting the replacement rate, that equals women not having kids. People are still having families. People are still having kids. They're just doing it a little bit later in life to hopefully find more successful partners to have a more successful relationship instead of getting married when you're like 18 with the first guy, whatever kind of shit. You know what I mean? So again, like this is more feminism kind of helping families from my perspective.
I call bullshit. Feminism has this lie. It's got a number of them. One of the most pronounced is this lie that you can have a career and a family. Fact of the matter is we're having more birth complications. We're having fertility issues. And it's no coincidence that, right, the average age of marriage, I believe in the US is 31. I forget what it is for having a kid. The culture I grew up in was Mormon. Mormons routinely will get married in their early 20s and stay married for their entire lives and pop out lots of kids and have happy lives. These are communities I've lived in. Now, I'm not saying everybody should be Mormon. In fact, I think it's great that not everybody's Mormon. I love the Mormons that we have. Wouldn't mind some more. I don't think we need a full Mormon overthrow of everything. But as neighbors go, they get along. They love each other. They're engaged. And so I guess my question to you is, do you agree that what's being told is have kids later, start your career now, deal with you now? Because what I really think it is that women are more comfortable, and I get it, having a more comfortable lifestyle, and they're not willing to go down on lifestyle in order to have a family earlier when it's the safest for them and all this other stuff.
I don't know if it's really about, I mean, obviously for some women, it is about lifestyle. Just like for some men, some people are obsessed with money and want that super luxurious, rich lifestyle. I think for the average woman who wants to go to college, it's because her parents told her, I don't want you to have to rely on a man because I've seen too many people do it and end up really hurt. Lots of our own generation watch this with our own moms go through this thing. So it's more about, huh?
What generation are you?
I'm a millennial.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so lots of us watch our own parents go through divorces and our moms kind of get like screwed over and watch their single moms and whatever. So it's more about just having a backup plan than I'd say being like you're being materialistic over family. It's more of a backup plan, a safety plan for you and your kids really in the end.
So isn't that sugarcoating, like, and for the kids? Like, the fact of the matter is, like, when you delay childbirth by like 10 years, biologically, that's a non-zero impact. And so you can say, well, it's not because they want to, drive a Mercedes Benz or whatever it is, but like it's about self-interest and choosing self over family, like facially. And like, I'm not even making a moral judgment on it. It's an observation. If you can spend your first decade, call it, 20 to 30 in school, work on your career, or you can spend it starting a family. You can't really do both without impeding on the other.
You can't do both unless you have support, really, is what it is. But I like, you're talking about marriage too. Lots of people are having kids out of wedlock. So I don't know the average age for the birth rate, honestly, off the top of my head. I don't know that. I would assume it's like in your late 20s, like probably like 27 or something. That would be my guess. I have no fucking idea. I could be wrong.
No, that's fair.
But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a super bad thing, is to kind of figure out your life first and then have children when you're more prepared.
Well, and this is, I think, again, a good fault line. To me, the goal of the marriage, the whole point isn't, for example, walked into my first marriage. It wasn't for my joy and satisfaction. It was to build a family. It was to join with another person, bring some tiny humans into the world and take care of them. And in that environment, a lot of times folks will say, oh, you know, Mormon faith, it's very patriarchal, and it is. It's very misogynistic, and it's not. But for the most part, men are sacrificing their everything to take care of their family and their community. And somehow they still get blamed for being the victim. These are the guys that go out, they do all this. This is how they spend their lives. Then they go to a family court and they get told they're the bad guy, and they get the rest of their careers destroyed. So this way, someone can, you know, it sounds like you are of the opinion that this is a pendulum that is already shifting.
Their careers getting destroyed from their divorce?
Oh, God, yes.
Because I mean, I don't know about, like, I'm talking about outside of Mormons. Again, I did bring this up earlier, but men fare better after divorce. Maybe not emotionally, but financially, women fare off worse usually after divorce than men do.
Yeah, and I said it's because they're bad with money.
Yeah,
I remember your facial reaction to that one.
And then we went over the debt and whatever, yada, yada, yada. We don't have to go over that again.
We found our differences of opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that the things you're talking about that are wrong with the courts have to do with feminism. But
what would you attribute it to then?
Again, like I said, the way that you kind of need money to have a more successful court case. You know, we see that in criminal law, we see that in family law.
Did you know that in family law, the man usually has to pay for both attorneys? Which means the woman, the mother here, is not actually suffering any of the direct financial consequence of that. In fact, they even exclude it from property separation.
I'm aware that happens in certain cases. That was not the case.
It's the law in Virginia, and I'm sure in other states. I haven't looked through all of them, but like, this is what's codified into our law, and this is the wood chipper that has been destroying men. You seem genuinely surprised that divorce damages a man's career. It's one of, so I do a lot in the startup world. I build businesses. That's what I do. One of the, if you look at a portfolio level, so like a venture fund that invests in a lot of startups, one of the things that they'll look at is a percentage of cases their companies are going to fail. And divorce is literally something that they list as they go. And this is a thing that will literally nuke. These are companies that put millions of dollars into companies that just crash because of a divorce. And so if you're not saying it's feminism, which has led to these outcomes, I'm real curious to know why it is that we're not, because it looks like one side consistently gets pushed over, and it's in the direction that the feminists have been pushing. So if the feminists have been pushing one way and we see a guy falling over, that's where I end up on it.
Like, again,
court fees, I wanted to throw that in there because the court fees, typically men don't, it's not automatic. It's not something that's guaranteed. If the wife makes a significantly lower amount, the judges will usually run a calculation. So if you actually have financial, like a financial disparity, for instance, or if she's not working at all, right? Then that turns it into marital assets. And then that would come out of, like, when they start doing the 50-50 or splitting this or splitting that, the legal fees get split accordingly as well. So but it's not automatic. It's not guaranteed. If the wife is working and the husband are both working and she's making a reasonably good amount, she'll have to pay her own legal fees, but it doesn't come with the territory.
It's a risk, boys. It's a risk. It's a non-zero risk.
You have to actually like request it, and you have to show like huge financial disparity differences between the two. Yeah, like it's a lot of work to do it.
So it really depends state to state. And some states are actually pretty good about staying on top of things. Like another area is when a man has a reduction in income, loses his job, loses hours, something like that. Some states have a really good system for, here's my pay stubs, let's get this adjusted. Others don't. And so you end up just having the snowball arrearage that under federal law can never be bankruptcied out of. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. It's just coming. So if there's a very heavy enforcement arm on the back end of any mistakes on this.
Yeah, and I would say that's another issue, but again, I don't think feminism would be to blame for that. That would be just the what's the word? The ability of the court systems to kind of function. Like ideally, if a father ends up losing employment or losing hours or for whatever reason, ideally he should be able to go to the courts and be like, look, I lost this much money, and then child support or whatever will be adjusted accordingly. And that's kind of supposed to like the ideal system. But I don't think that's an issue of feminism. That's just an issue of the courts not being ideal, which I did say in my opening statement too. Is that they're not perfect and need to be better.
Right. So you'd say it's a bug, not a feature. Meaning it's something working incorrectly, not a bad workflow that was designed this way.
It's not because of feminism, basically.
So it might be a feature of the system, but it wasn't a feature installed by feminism.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know what else we might have to cover here.
I don't know either.
How about you, Ghosty?
Let me look through.
While you're looking, I'm just gonna relax a little here. It's been a long day.
Like from most of my research, I just saw on all different legal websites because I was going from different states, whatever. And just from all the different websites, repeatedly, they would say things like there is a narrative that there is a wide disparity between men and women receiving custody. But this isn't always true. And then I do want to say there was a spike during the pandemic because mothers ended up, a lot of mothers ended up like working from home more. So there were more stay-at-home mothers. So there was a little bit of spike of women getting more. But before that, it was like mothers get custody around 58% of the time compared to fathers around 42% of the time. So yeah, that's like a slight difference, but I don't think it's not as big of a disparity that most people think it is. So again, I would just tell fathers to expect to fight for your kids. And there are some I don't know exactly what it is, but there is some help for fathers to be able to pay for lawyers for family courts and stuff through. And I'm sure you're a Republican, so you're probably against welfare and all these things that go to help fathers, like needy fathers and stuff. So just saying, it's another liberal feminism idea.
No, like why is that your rhetorical angle?
There's actually a lot of great, I mean, even here in Maryland, they have where if you can't afford a lawyer, they have a whole library. You can actually go and sit and talk with people who are allowed to guide you in the right direction. They can help you fill out the paperwork. They can kind of guide you through the rules or any type of law that you're kind of working with, and so on and so forth. But you can get free lawyers, or even if you want to represent yourself, you can still do like self-guided stuff with them. It's very nice how they have it all set up.
I'm just trying to prove that like a more liberal mindset is going to be more beneficial for struggling fathers.
Well, but you're presupposing some things about me, and I do take offense to that. I'm not typically hard to offend. And let me finish, if I may.
Okay.
Like, I'm not particularly bothered by it. Whatever, we're having a debate. This has been interesting. It's been nice. I appreciate you engaging with me on it. But what you did to me is a cardinal sin, and it's fine. Whatever. Again, we're just debating here. But you said, you seem like you're a Republican, so blah, 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 blah. You painted me as a monolith when you don't understand me, and I'm literally right here. If you wanted to ask me a question, hey, Josh, are you this? Are you that? You could explore it. But instead you go, I think you might be a Republican, blah, 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 blah. And it's fine. You can have your opinion. But if we're engaging in something here, I wouldn't mind if you actually confirmed I believe the way you think I do before you attributed it to me.
That's fair. I was just assuming based on everything you said tonight that you're conservative. But yeah, I don't know. Like, do you believe in like welfare and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely do lean conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative. Generally, I distrust the government because of its ability to mess things up. And I try to lean more towards individuals, families, and community support as the way that we manage things. I like those sort of more. But even at that, not all conservatives view things the same way. And I think that, a part of why I appreciate everything Sarah does in debates and discussions like this, the panel verse in general, is that we are trying to have discussions with people. And I'm not looking for reasons to be offended. But on the same token, I know rhetoric I use in ways I talk to people sometimes gets their ears all pointy and gets them all worked up when I'm not trying to. And so at a minimum, I do think it's helpful if we're aware of that. You might not have assumed that I would be bothered by you saying, oh, well, you're Republican, so, you eat goats or whatever. It's just, we're so much more interesting than that. Like, I wouldn't, for example, just to wrap it here, I wouldn't say you're a filthy libtard. I wouldn't say blah, blah, blah. I think you're ghosty, and I think you've got your views and your ideas, and I'm interested in exploring those. And I prefer those types of interactions with people over, just spurging out at each other over, you're wrong. No, you're wrong.
I don't think I used a demeaning word towards you. I did just make an assumption about your judgment, though. And I shouldn't have done that.
I appreciate
she kept it pretty open, though. She said, I think you might be this or that. So if so, wouldn't you appreciate this more or something? I didn't feel like it was like it didn't sound derogatory by any means. And I think it's safe.
I do that with sometimes. Though.
I think it's safe. If you're coming into a debate, typically people research their opposition. So I think that would be safe for her to say that, assuming she did that type of research, and assuming if you're going against feminism ideologies, and assuming you're going against like all of these things that would lead to that assumption. I think it's a fair assumption.
It was fair. And my criticism was more on arriving at the assumption of one thing and then just launching down a logic train that might not be true. And the only reason I even really am bothered by it is it just gets in the way of good discourse. And I think, Ghosty, I think we've actually had some nice moments here in this discussion. I really appreciate you here. I know some of it can be rough, but I try to also be clear on the fact that, it can be challenging to navigate these discussions. So I don't want to be too aggressive.
No, for sure. You're honestly pleasant to debate.
Fair enough.
Compared to most people.
If you guys didn't have anything else, we'll go ahead and move into closing statements, and just roll into open panel, and maybe some more voices can come on and add more to the topic. I think there's a lot of shit talkers in the chat, so we should be able to I'll make them all come up. Don't worry. Joshua, if you'd like to begin with your closing statement, please.
Yeah, I just, one of the things that I will say I don't always have the opportunity to enjoy is actually having my views or perspectives challenged. When I do have debates or discussions like with you, Ghosty, and thank you for joining us here tonight, I do try to understand something about the way the other side thinks, because they don't think the way I do. And if Ghosty doesn't eat babies, and if she seems like a generally pleasant individual, then I'd like to understand how she arrives at the way that she arrives, because it isn't based off of a love of the suffering of individuals. So these discussions can be challenging, and I do appreciate that we got to be able to actually engage in some frameworks here. I do think there's some genuine points of discussion. I think one of the things hopefully Ghosty will follow up with on those statistics of allegedly fathers just aren't asking. Gentlemen, I reinforce, be careful out there. If you get a chick knocked up, she can kill it. You got no say in it. She can put you on child support, 18 years. And on top of that, keep you out of your kid's life. Now, feminism that I'm hearing, the same feminist motion from the first, second, and third and fourth wave are now pushing towards men's rights. So since I guess it makes, it all makes sense now, because if fourth wave feminism included trans women becoming women, then by the fifth wave, we need to start arguing for men's rights as well. So maybe it's a self-correcting loop here. Isn't that great? I will say, I do think that the pipeline for how we are educating attorneys and the way the dispositions they have heading into the bar and then going on to be attorneys and then going on to be judges means ideologies like feminism can spread like cancer. And I'm grateful for this American experiment. We've got different states doing different things, and we've managed to see some good case studies of maybe some better outcomes. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised and delighted that Ghosty brought up 50-50 custody, because I really do think that if someone is saying they care about men too, that is an issue to be bringing up. So tip of the hat to Ghosty for bringing that up in her opening.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. Ghosty, to you, please.
All right, so yeah, kind of on the same token, I understand where lots of men come from in these conversations because they do have experiences that were unpleasant in the courts. So again, I do understand that. I just personally usually don't blame feminism for those things. And again, he's telling men to be careful and stuff. So this is from the dadsdivorcelaw.com, and I found this all over the internet, everywhere I looked. It says the most recent available census statistics show that fathers represent around 1 in 5 custodial parents, an improvement over the 16% custodial parents reported in 1994. So from 1994 to today, we jumped what's that? Like at least 5% or something like that in 20 years. Could definitely still do more improvement, but like I said, there's only 20 states that start at 50-50 custody. So I think that is something we need to work on. And it says, however, studies indicate that dads simply do not ask for custody as often as mothers do, and courts generally do not award what is asked for in that regard. So again, if you are doing the custody thing, don't just think that because you're a father, you're not going to get custody. My advice to you would be to fight for it. And I know that sucks. Divorce and custody, none of that is fun. None of that is going to be fun for people. But I really do think in the end, feminism is trying to dismantle these biases that women are the better mothers, women can't be abusers, women can't abuse children, fathers don't care about their children, blah, blah, blah. Feminism is supposed to show that gender has nothing to do with your ability to parent. So in that regard, I do think feminism has helped the courts and has helped promote this type of legislation that leads to better custody for fathers.
Perfect. Thank you, Ghosty. All right. And we're going to read the super chats, but I also want to tell, again, all of you shit talkers, click the link and get your butt back here. And you need to come to talk your shit on screen instead of staying in the comments.
Be nice
all
to
right.
Ghosty.
Be nice to Ghosty. I think there are probably more of them would come to you.
I hope so.
This was a pretty
I can take
chill
them.
debate, so
I'm glad you felt that way. I really do try to connect with people, and it's really hard to actually understand them if you're I can pressure people. I don't like to. I'd rather actually understand, right? I believe as long as you believe what you're saying, I want to understand it. And so I don't like the tricks. Plus, if I'm nice to people, they're nicer back to me.
Exactly.
I'm just not nice to anyone. Makes it easier. All right. Jen sends tomato tax. Thank you so kindly. And I'm actually disappointed in a lot of you. I know you've all had like a nice little 4-day break from the tomato. Yeah, that's all fun. I get it. But you've had 4 days of not paying your tomato taxes. So please pay up, pay well, and let's go.
Or get fined.
Or I'll put the chat on members only, and then I'll really piss you off. Robert says, when I make a BLT, I'll think of you. Now I'm hungry, Robert. I'm gonna, after we open up the panel, I'm gonna go totally make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So thank you so much. Appreciate that. Is anybody else hungry by chance?
I am actually, but
a bunch.
Fair enough. Iotin says, I know a man whose ex quit her job and moved in with her parents to request higher child support. At least that's how he tells it. He barely gets to see his kid because of all the needed overtime. He's a 26-year-old. I can actually speak to this. If you on purpose, get a crappy job or don't you quit your job just to adjust child support. Men can't do this either, right? If you, like, as a man, quit your job tomorrow and said, Your Honor, I don't have a job, I have no income, I can't pay, the judge will still review the last 3 years of your and consider potential earnings. Same thing for a woman. And even if, let's say, she was a stay-at-home mom for 5 years and then you got a divorce, they'll still hold her to, you have to get a job, right? So with this story, Iotin, she could certainly try to request higher child support, but she has to show what her prior, you can't just go in and say, I want more money just because I'm not making as much. Something detrimental. It's called
change in circumstance.
yeah, it's yes. And it has to be something completely crazy. Like maybe I got in a car accident and I am on disability for the next 6 months, right? Things are going to be different if I was paying child support, right? So the courts require a lot. You have to work a lot to try to make this happen. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. But a lot of people like to say that.
I'm also not denying that there isn't people who abuse the system, but like, again, I just don't put this on feminism. Like, it's just a shitty person at that point. Like, there's tons of contentious divorces and parents, like there's a lot of shitty people who do really shitty things to their spouses. And, you know, there might be some stupid woman who's out there saying girl power, but that's like, in my mind, that's not feminism. That's just somebody being a shitty, selfish person.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts to you, Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you're a man and you're making money and you lose your job, they can just assume that you're doing it to screw with them, even though they've been putting you in the meat grinder. So I would say, guys, do not listen to any siren or soothsayer saying, oh, it'll be okay. Just assume the worst. And I'll tell you, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you get the 50-50 custody. I hope you get the no alimony. I hope you and here's the other thing too on this issue. I do have fiery passion because at the edge case, a lot of destruction happens. But there are a lot of women who will just divorce a guy and not be a bitch about it. And those are, I admire those women. And so if you're a woman, if ever divorced a man and not just upended his life, thank you. That was damn decent of you.
Most people are reasonable. Rude Mud Crab sends in the $5 and says, $600K on family court. That explains the $6 haircut. You really spent $600,000 on. How long has your court case been going on for?
So from filing in March of 2017, I think, to the final order of divorce, I think a little over a year later, between both sides, it was about $500,000. I paid about $300K of that. We're still fighting. At this point, I've been remarried for almost as long as the first marriage. And the fiery eternal abyss is still saying, no, we're right, even though I'm saying, no, they're wrong. But yeah, this is, and it is a bit of an edge case also in the sense of, and I don't mean this arrogantly, but like at the time the divorce happened, like I had just built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch. So I put $1,000 in a credit card. I had a healthy business. I was bringing in good money, like, and then it crashed. And then the system's like, we don't care if it crashed or it's your fault that it crashed. And like, that's a heavy edge case on it. But yeah, and then it's just, it's like works like clockwork for those guys. It's crazy.
That sucks. I'm sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not tax deductible either. It's super bullshit. I wish I had $6 for a haircut. I'm sorry.
Right. A shout out to Plumpy for sending in a tomato membership. And it looks like Flo's backstage. He's plugged in. He's getting memberships over on his end from Smoking Auditor. And he says, stop in before work to light up. Hit the like button. Thank you so kindly, Auditor. All right. I will go ahead and get us kicked off with our panel. I've got 3 backstage right now, but I know we're going to have some fun with these 3. And Joshua, I believe they are all coming for you on this one. Here we go.
Wonderful.
That's a first for me.
I have a good light.
My button not clicking? Am I frozen?
Oh. All right. I see what we got here.
It is us, the three amigos.
Hello, gentlemen. Which of you would like either one of our asses first? Just mine. I'm not offering anyone else's.
I yield to the other two. I didn't watch the video. I'm gonna let them build up.
Fair enough.
Dusty.
That's fair. I think my system's like freezing. So if I interrupt anyone or something, I apologize. I'm like getting every other word from you guys, but I'll let Effigy, since Effigy was talking so much shit in the chat, kick it off. And also, before you start, Effigy, the gauntlet is officially open. Start making your way over there if you already know where you're going. Otherwise, I will drop the link and we'll shut down Tomato Side in 2 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Effigy, let's hear it.
To go with the original prompt, I think there are tons of things that feminism has helped as far as family court. Even if you don't want to take account for all the things that it has helped women achieve, feminism is the primary reason that children in courts are no longer basically considered chattel. They're not considered the property of their father.
Right, the property of the mother.
Their interests are now. Well, but it's
the property of the parent
that are taken into account now, and they're not treated as chattel. Basically,
yeah, I mean they are.
That was a huge difference.
They're literally used as a leverage point to get more money and fuck on a guy. It's just now mom's using it.
They're placed. The court takes their interest into account as to where they're placed. It's no longer just a matter of property. It's
okay.
Whether or not you want to say it's not, but that was that's old English common law. Basically, is that children are property.
Okay.
Literal
like a dog or a cat.
And like additionally, now women can also be on the hook for child support, and that happens plenty as well. So
yeah, and it happens 3 out of 97 or 3 out of
that
100.
was for that was alimony.
Alimony. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about child support, but
alimony is rare regardless, isn't it?
Yeah,
now it is.
It's rare for the people that aren't paying it. She said, what was it, 10%?
It was like roughly 10% of divorces are awarded alimony, and it's like almost always temporary.
So 2 million weddings a year in the U.S. That's 200,000 of them. Well, cut it in half, get a divorce. So that's going to be 100. What is it? Yeah, 100,000 per year that are going to go on it if those numbers play out. That's something.
Again, like even in Texas, you can't even ask for alimony unless you've been married for 10 years. So
right. There's also state
again, it's state by state.
Minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be a personal question. You might have answered it already, but approximately how big of a net worth did you guys have to divide up to come up with a $600,000 bill?
Well, it was primarily the value of the future earnings of a software company that I had built. Mm-hmm. And so I got leveraged into debt over debt over debt. Ballpark total net assets around 5 million.
Okay.
Which is different than what was liquid and on hand. I got tapped out. I had to fire staff. It was my staff took a huge hit during the divorce. And then actually 2 of them got fired because of it. Had nothing to do with business, just economics.
Are there not systems in place to negotiate like fees and stuff if like your income drastically changes? Like those have to exist, right?
There are. So there's a judge on the Fairfax County Circuit bench. There's 4 of them in particular, but one, well, there's more than 4. One in particular, her name's Judge Christy Leary. She heard my ex-wife testify point blank. She makes $100,000 a year. Original support was based off of making $0 a year, and the judge struck my motion, claiming I hadn't met the burden of proof because for some reason, beyond any recognition, she thought that $100,000 a year increase from $0,000 per year increase was not a change of circumstance. There's currently an appeal sitting in the 4th Circuit on that one.
Wait, your wife made $100K a year?
Right. And they still told me I had to pay her as if she made $0K per year after she just testified that for more than a year, she'd been making $100K a year. And I had to collapse. Yeah.
It probably has to do with the percent of the calculation. So when you run calculations, like you don't have to, I know you mentioned earlier that you're supposed to have your daughter, I believe 4 nights a week.
4. Yeah. I should be able to see her 4 days a week. I've seen her for 5 hours in the last 5 years.
What?
But now, does your wife or ex-wife live in Virginia and you live in Nevada?
And no matter, and my ex-wife won't comply with the custody agreement. We literally had a trial about it. I brought all of the evidence. My ex-wife admitted to the things that I claimed that she did, and then the judge just handwove it and said, "Oh no, this is nothing."
Is she there for her job or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, we had ties. That's where we got married. And my daughter does get excellent support. My daughter had 4 brain surgeries before she turned 2. The fact that she's alive at all is a miracle. Her doctor wasn't sure she'd live to 3. She turns 11 next year.
Oh,
so that's something I'm very happy about.
Yeah, that's
How
good
long
to
have you
hear.
guys lived that far apart?
Well, so I was her primary caretaker for like the first 6 weeks she was born while my ex-wife was recovering. We were married at the time. And then I saw my daughter 3-4 times a week for 3 to 4 hours till she was 5. And then I couldn't afford to live in Virginia anymore, so I moved out west.
So that's why the mom's getting favored at this point. She's been the primary custodial parent for so long that you got a big uphill battle to go.
Also, jurisdiction applies like where the child has been living for the past couple of years.
Dusty, you're out of your mind. And jurisdiction is perpetual under the Uniform Custody Enforcement Agreement, and there's no question that Virginia has jurisdiction over it. Generally, a family court certainly in Virginia, whenever they start the case, they're going to retain jurisdiction until everybody moves out of the state. So as long as one party is still in that state, they retain jurisdiction over it until the end of everyone.
Your mic's kind of cutting out, but
it might have been because I threw the music in. You got echo cancellation on, but it should. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to settle in on people's mics.
What I understood was that if it the jurisdiction is determined by where the child has been living for the past 5 years of their life, or 3 or something like that, but wherever the child has been residing. So if she was born in Virginia and has been living there, then from what I looked up, that's where the jurisdiction would.
Yeah, and parents typically courts typically run off of precedence of what the child has been doing versus what they could be doing in the future. So, for instance, if your wife lived in Virginia in the same house for the last 5 years, then anything going forward, they're going to try to keep the child as stable as possible and not if you're living across the country, right? I could understand maybe some holidays or summer times or something to that degree, but they're not going to send the kid to you over 4 days on 4 days.
Not even claiming that. I'm saying literally the custody agreement says I email my ex-wife on Sunday the schedule for the week, then I go. It's not permission. It's a question. But she doesn't do it. She doesn't comply with it. I document everything. I go to the court and the court says we don't care.
Well, can I ask, how are you, because you have 4 days a week, how are you expecting to have that when it's a flight, if requires a flight for your daughter to get there?
So for example, what we're blowing past is, for up until about 5 years ago, I lived there. In fact, I was within walking distance, and my ex-wife still wouldn't comply with the custody agreement, so I couldn't exercise exercise what was in the custody agreement. So I had 2 options: stay somewhere I couldn't afford, or get the hell out and try to grow somewhere else. So that's what I went with. Fact of the matter is, the judge is derelict when they sit there and they say, I hear evidence that, for example, the mother's violating the custody agreement, or I hear evidence that the mother has had a change in income. And then the judge says, I don't care. That's where zealotry gets in. To get back to the point here, this is a judge that was in her private practice. She was proud of the fact she was a top 50 woman attorney. I don't know why the fact that she was a woman had anything to do with anything on that, but that was a contest she won that she was proud of. And so she seems ideologically based. The law firm that is getting away with everything they want, they have a close relationship. A lot of what happens in our courts is the bar associations and the local attorneys, they all see each other in court on a regular basis, hearing lots of different motions. And so they get comfortable with each other. And what ends up happening is there's a culture that decides how these things go, and they abandon law over time, especially when they're all in the same tribe.
So let me interrupt, and I'll give it back to you, Flo. I'm sorry. We're moving over to the gauntlet now. I'm officially shutting down the tomato side. I dropped the link into the chat. If you know where you're going, head on over now. Otherwise, you're going to catch the raid. Thank you so kindly. Flow to you.